I am here today with Alicia Hill. She is from Wyoming and she is mom to CDH survivor Kinley. Hi, Alicia. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Alicia Hill, and I'm from Wyoming. So I have 3 kids now. I'm married. My husband's name is Adam. We have 3 kids. Kinley was our first baby, and then we have another daughter named Hadley and a son named Bridger. So Kinley was our first baby, like I said, my first pregnancy, my first experience with being a mom and all of that stuff. And it was definitely one that was challenging and probably the hardest thing that we've ever had to do up to this point. So I'll just kind of jump right in here. At 20 weeks, we went in to see what we were having, and we found out we were having a girl, and also found out that day that she was, well, actually our OBGYN just said that he noticed that her stomach was up and he thought that she had a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. And really, he didn't say a whole lot to me that day, which probably was a good thing. He also told me not to go and look it up online, right, which I still did. And definitely was very scary. And I wanted to know more. Like, I didn't understand what all of it meant. And he just said, I need you to get to Denver. We'll arrange all of your appointments. And so we were in Denver the very next week, actually. At that appointment, I met with an OBGYN down there at Presbyterian St. Luke's or Rocky Mountain Children's Hospital. But the same thing, Rocky Mountain Children's Hospital at Presbyterian St. Luke's. And we also met with a surgeon. We also met with a NICU doctor. So there was a lot going on in that first appointment. We always joke around with one of the NICU doctors that met with us that day, because she absolutely told us every worst case scenario with what can happen or occur with a baby that is born with a diaphragmatic hernia. So we heard all about ECMO and the surgery and what that would mean for Kinley. And we always knew, the surgeon always said the sooner they can have that surgery to repair the hernia, the better, obviously, because everything being shoved up into her chest cavity and her lungs not able to form. We left there feeling very defeated, and just obviously not knowing, obviously our chances of survival got better each time, but CDH babies are only given 50% chance to live at first diagnosis. And after that, we met once a month in Denver with the doctors, and just always checked on Kinley's prognosis. And the surgeon often found more lung tissue, which always was a good thing for us. He determined that most of her insides, her stomach, her liver, her intestines, much of those items were all in her chest cavity on her left side. So she was a left-sided CDH baby. By the time that we were scheduled to give birth, I was down in Denver at that time. And I was induced only close to my due date, only because we wanted to make sure that, my husband was there, and so that it was more planned and things like that. My labor was great. I had no problems with that. I delivered her naturally. And of course, the team of doctors was there to quickly take her. They placed her on me for about 2 seconds, which was hard. And then immediately intubated her and took her down to the NICU. The next time I saw her was rough. I'll never forget walking down there and seeing all the tubes on her. And at the time, it was horrible timing. The time I walked down, they were putting IVs into her head. And so, she was covered in blood and things like that. Not things that a mom, especially that just delivered the baby, wants to see. And then I'll never forget, the NICU doctors and nurses were so amazing where we were, and our experience was amazing. The doctor walked up after she saw me, because I just turned around and had to walk back out, and she came back up and she was like, "I'm so sorry that you had to see that. It's just, we have to do these things for her." And she was so good about explaining everything and helping us understand. I think that one of the biggest things that we went into with this experience is just every CDH baby is so different. And so, we didn't hear a whole lot of stories, but in our minds, we had like this time frame of when we thought for sure Kinley was going to be able to come home, or that she would be able to go back to Wyoming. And that was like, if I can give any advice, it's there's no timetable with these babies, because you honestly have no idea. No. And so time is your enemy, and it's also your friend. And it's just one of those things that you can't go into expecting something, because you honestly have no idea. And so in our minds, we were like, oh, a few weeks, we'll be here a few weeks, we'll get transferred back to Wyoming, and everything will be fine. And, that's just not how it worked. So at 3 days old, Kinley was able to have surgery. They immediately, let me back up a little bit. They put her on a conventional ventilator first, and then she went through her surgery. At 3 days old, they repaired the hernia, and she was doing really well, but she started fighting everything. And so they had to take her off the conventional ventilator, because she was trying to breathe on her own on top of that. And we know that those babies, they can't do that. And so she was placed on the oscillator ventilator, which unfortunately meant that we couldn't hold her on the oscillator. And a few days, I can't remember the exact day, but pretty quickly after her first surgery, she also had pulmonary hypertension. And so again, just all of the stress that her body was undergoing, she was placed on Viagra, which I'll never forget when the doctor said that. I was like, wait, I have a daughter, and she's a baby. So that was kind of funny for us. And the doctors are like, we always love telling parents about that, because most people don't understand that that's actually what Viagra was made for. So she was placed on that. She was heavily sedated for probably the first two weeks, a good solid 2 weeks of her life. So it never really felt like we could see her in there. At times she kind of opened her eyes, but obviously because of the sedation and the medication, the pain medicine she was on as well, she just kind of laid there, and we did our cares and wiped her and, changed her diaper certain times and all that kind of stuff. So really the first few weeks after surgery were kind of uneventful, just giving her some time. And she was on the oscillator ventilator for about 3 weeks. So we didn't get to hold her until after that. And once that was taken away, she went to the conventional vent, but then that actually came out pretty quickly, which was awesome. So it progressed quick. After that, we just started working on feeding and all of the difficulties that can come with that. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything eventful, after you start your feedings. It's kind of, again, just letting her grow and heal. At 7 weeks, we were moved up to the graduate NICU. She was doing really well and taking her feedings well. We had a lot of run-ins, not with the doctors as far as they were doing what they could. What we started noticing, Adam and I were able to stay at the hospital the entire time with her, as far as we didn't spend the night there, but we were able to be there the entire time with her. And so we kind of had our little routine every single day. I always tell people we lived Groundhog's Day for 77 days. But what we started noticing, and I really started asking the doctors, was if this were a normal baby, which these babies aren't quote normal, but I said, if we were home, I would be letting her eat when she wanted to eat and however much she wanted to eat. And so they were very good about listening to us too, which I appreciated, because, you know, it's hard, especially as first-time parents, to go through this in this setting and then not feel like you were still the parents, but also not wanting to undermine a doctor.
Right.
But they were very good at listening to us and the things that we kind of saw, being with her every single day, all the time. And so, like I said, they really were very respectful of listening to us and explaining things to us. So we just started working on feeding, and at 8 weeks old, at 8 weeks old to the day, she had stopped pooping.
Oh, no.
And Kinley also had thrush a few times in her mouth through all of this process. And so they thought maybe the thrush had returned, just, you know, kind of unsure at the time what was happening. They ended up taking her down, still no poop through the night. They ended up taking her down to run some tests and found a bowel obstruction. Her intestine had turned on itself. So they brought her back to the NICU after all the tests were ran, and then it was determined that the surgery needed to happen right then. So she was taken right then into her second surgery. I remember the surgeon coming in and talking to us about, you know, the fact that he said, well, we can't cut into her same scar. And I was like, I don't even care. Like, just fix my baby, you know? And so the second surgery was done. While they were in there the second time, he came out and told us that they went ahead and took her appendix out, which I was actually thankful for, because he said, this will give her problems later on in life. So we just took the appendix. So it seemed like everything was going great. She had a good first night after surgery. But the next day, it was rough. The second surgery was much more stressful for her than the first even. And so I remember going back to the hospital the next day, and there was a nurse that was standing by her side, would not leave her bed. And they kept having to give her oxygen, and her stats were dropping regularly. And we left the hospital that day for lunch or something in the afternoon, and we got a call that said, you guys need to come back. And so I was like, oh my gosh, you know, what's going on? And so I remember walking into the NICU and back in where Kinley's little bed was, and we saw the doctor standing over her. And I mean, the doctors do a ton of work, but when you see the doctor actually working on your child right then and there, you know that it's not great. Kinley's pulmonary hypertension had returned. Like, I mean, I don't know the severity level, but it wasn't good. The stress in her little body, it couldn't handle it. And so it was starting to shut her body down. They placed her back on the oscillator ventilator, and it was just, I don't know. I mean, I can't even explain like how we just felt so defeated after that second surgery, because we were so hopeful and we thought we were so close to going home. And after that, you know, it seemed to us, and it felt like to us, we've talked about this a lot, that the second surgery actually was way worse than the first surgery for us. And you know, you don't know how these babies are going to respond to stress and things like that. So after the second surgery, it was right after Thanksgiving in 2010. And, you know, at first our hopes were that we were going to be home before Christmas. And then after all this, and then she was placed back on the oscillator, it just felt like we were starting back over. And so again, time, that lovely friend of yours, or whatever you want to call it, just kind of came back. And the reality was that we weren't going to be home in time for Christmas. And so we went back to work, and, you know, we said we put that aside and just said, okay, let's focus on Kinley and getting her back to where she was. And a few days later, one of our doctors said to us, my hope is to have her home for Christmas. And we were like, yeah, right. You know, we know how this process works. And even the nurses were like, you know, you could just tell they were very skeptical. And he said, no, I'm going to push her. We're doing this. And a week later from her second surgery, they got her off the oscillator ventilator again. And again, he kept saying to us, we're doing it. She's going to do this and we're going to push her and we're going to do it. And we were home on December 22nd of 2010. So it was amazing. I mean, he knew, and Kinley fought, and she did amazing, and she bounced back quickly, which for us, I mean, again, every story is so different, and you know, you never know with these babies what will happen, but she bounced back quickly. She started her feedings quickly after the ventilator. She was taken off the ventilator again.
She was able to come home without a feeding tube or needing any assistance.
Yep. So the only thing Kinley came home on was oxygen, and then of course Viagra. So she was on Viagra for about the first year of her life. We did still see the surgeon regularly for checkups. And then we also met with the cardiologist team from Rocky Mountain Children's Hospital. They didn't come to Casper at that time, but they were coming to a town that was close to us. And so we would drive for regular appointments to check up with them. And, you know, we were hopeful. I mean, oxygen is hard to have with all of the other things that you're carrying with a baby. But so we were really hoping that, like in the spring, especially after you kind of got through the flu season and things like that, that she would be able to come off. But she didn't come off oxygen until about 9 months. So in July that year, she came off of the oxygen. Well, and I should back up. We did go to oxygen just at night for a while too. And then she was fully off of oxygen in July. So at about 9 months old, she was off of oxygen. And our last appointment with the surgeon was when she was 1, and he cleared her and he thought everything looked great. We have seen him since. Kinley's chest up here in her sternum area has always been a little bit concave, so it sticks in a lot. Our pediatrician here in our hometown noticed that to him, it seemed like it was getting worse. And so he wanted us to go to Denver to check in with our surgeon and kind of see there. So it was kind of crazy. We had her measured because what he decided he wanted to do was put her in a brace for about a year, 9 months to a year. And then there was just life kind of got crazy, and then COVID hit. And so we have not got the brace yet. Our plan is to do that this year before she goes to middle school, just so she doesn't have to deal with that in middle school. So our plan is still to do that. But other than that, he did take a look at her, the patch, and noticed that the tissue had grown around the patch really well. And so he thought that she would be good with whatever needs to be done. In the future, or whatever that means. You know, obviously there's always a chance for reherniation, but he was really good and was pleased with that. So
that's good. That's very good. How old is she again?
She's 10.
She's 10. Has she noticed her CDH scars? Has she said anything or?
Yes. Actually, it's really interesting to me because Kinley is very active. She does sports and all those things, but when she runs, she always tells me that her long scar where the repair was done, it's a little bit longer than where they did the second surgery, because it hurts. And I don't know if it's scar tissue or what it is, but she really only notices or complains of the actual scar spot hurting when she's running. And so I don't know. I have no idea if it's just the scar tissue and like her body growing, you know, that makes it pull on it. But yes, she does. She is not, as of this point, she's not unconscious. She's not, what is the word I'm looking for? Self-conscious. There we go. About her scars at all. You know, we talk to her regularly about the miracle that she is, and the fighter that she is, and all of the things that she had to go through to get to this point. And
Right.
I tell people all the time, there's something about CDH babies, or even NICU babies in that matter. And I swear to you, it's like they subconsciously know, because it just makes them, I mean, Kinley has like a heart of gold, and she's so caring and so empathetic to people. And I've heard that from multiple people that have had babies in the NICU or whatever.
Right.
And I truly believe that. I mean, I really do. And she's so, you know, just, I mean, she's grateful for the things that she hears us talking about too. You know, she'll say, well, I don't remember that I'm a baby, but I was a baby.
Yeah, she's a fighter.
Yeah, I mean, they know. I truly believe there's just something special about them. And
I agree.
yeah. So
I
since
agree.
then, I have to mention this because, I mean, I'd never heard of CDH before. It was like,
Mhm.
you know, hitting the lottery. And but since Kinley's diagnosis, we have actually personally known 3 other people that have had babies that were born with CDH.
Hmm.
And it was such, I think that it was a blessing to them, because I reached out to them once I had found out their diagnosis and was able to, you know, chat with them and just share our
Right.
story. And so it's always interesting how everything works together for the good, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like we were a good resource for them. And,
Yes.
you know, you can't, I mean, you know, you can't, as a NICU parent, you can't explain that to people that aren't NICU parents. Like, there's just something that is there that unless you live that and go through it, you can't explain it.
Right.
But it's
I
experience.
agree.
Yeah, it's an experience for me too, that it's hard, and it's sometimes awful, but it changed me so much, and it changed our lives, and it changed us for the better. And we're just so thankful for the doctors and nurses that we had, and for everything that they did. And
Mhm.
so, you know, you get to the point where you can say, I would never do that again. But I don't think that I would say that, because I
Mhm.
look back on everything that we went through and everything that Kinley's been through. And I mean, there was a reason for it. And
Right.
I feel like we are better for it. So.
Right. And I'm sure the worry played into when you had your other 2 kids. You always wondered if.
Oh, absolutely. So my OBGYN actually was amazing to me, because I had my second daughter. It took us a while to get pregnant with Kinley. And so then when all this happened, it was, I mean, it's always hard, but then it was really hard because it had taken us so long to
Mhm.
get pregnant anyway. And then when I got pregnant with Hadley, my middle daughter, they're close. They're only 16 months apart. And so I was a nervous wreck, and my OBGYN was so wonderful. And he did ultrasounds for me regularly with her,
Nice.
so that I could see. And I was like, where's the stomach?
Right.
What do you see? You know? And so he was just fantastic. So that was amazing for him too. So
That's good. That's
yeah.
good. Being here in Wyoming, we often don't have the resources that some of these
Right.
bigger states have.
Right.
You know, our hospitals are smaller, so we're very
Yep.
fortunate to have good OBs that are like that
Absolutely.
here in Wyoming.
Yeah. And I should say too, that he had only diagnosed one other CDH baby at that point. And so he wasn't quick to say it's CDH. Like he just said,
Mhm.
I think it's CSC. I think she has a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, and I want you to go to Denver. And that's another thing I always appreciated about him was, like you said, I mean, in Wyoming, it's different. We're small and they don't see all of these things like they do in bigger places. And he never acted like he knew. I mean, he never acted like he knew everything. He was always very good about, like I said, listening to me and then coming back from Denver. I did have a few appointments with him still, even though I was going to Denver. I mean, he's human, you know, doctors are human too. And he was so good about just, if he didn't know, he didn't know, and he wouldn't act like he did. And so that was, I mean, we just had the best possible people in our paths at this time that helped us out so much. And
that's good.
So yeah.
That's very good. Is there anything that you wish you would have known prior to having a CDH baby?
Honestly, so obviously on Facebook, you know, I eventually found like CDH International and those kinds of pages, which are so helpful. I love getting on and reading people's stories. I never found those pages until after I had Kinley. So if there was things I wish that I would have known, it was more about these types of things. And I mean, and you guys are always on this page very, very quick to say that, you know, we're not doctors, we're not medical professionals, but I still love to hear people's stories. And as far as, I mean, just wishing, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And like I said, my OB was like, don't go Google this. And I wish I would have listened. I mean, it was awful. I was sobbing, but I just didn't know, you know, you don't know about these types of things. And so, I mean, if I wished anything, it was that I had found these pages sooner, that, you know, resources and things like that. Because how amazing I mean, I always see people posting and asking questions about, can I, you know, like things to expect. And again, so different, but it would still be so helpful to know. And that's why with any of the people that I have come into contact with, that their child was diagnosed with CDH, I'm like, I'm going to reach out to them because I think it's so, you just don't know. I mean, it's such a rare thing that, but it's more prevalent than you even think too. I mean, it's rare, but it's still prevalent. Like it's still out there. And so, I mean, just resources. That's what I wish that I would have had sooner, I guess.
That's great. And we're working hard here at CDH International to try to get more resources into our hospitals and get more parent reference guides. We've just now within the last couple of years have got those translated into different languages and trying to get those into the NICUs and the surgeon's offices and have those readily available. It's just been within the last couple of years, we've been able to do that. So as we advance and make changes and have more support finances to make those changes, we're definitely pushing those resources out for families.
Yeah. And I can tell, I mean, I've watched this page grow too, since I have found it, you know, several years ago. And so I know that you guys are doing all that you can do, which is, you know, this month is a big month and
it is.
April 15th is a big day. And so I always try and do my part too, to make sure that we're raising awareness on our end as well.
Right. We greatly appreciate that.
Sure.
Is there any one last piece of advice you would give a CDH family?
I mean, I feel like I said it, but I'll say it again, just that, you know, time is your friend and your enemy. And
cherish every moment.
Yep. And you can't go in with really any expectations because you just don't know. And like I said, the families that I've reached out to, I'm always very careful to say, you know, this is my story of my baby, but your story will be so different. And it is. I mean, one of the moms, their baby's CDH was a right side CDH, and she was only in the hospital for 2 weeks. You know, so, that's great, but every baby is just so different. And I can't stress that enough. And reading stories after stories, you know, they're all just different. And that's the biggest thing. And just be patient, you know, it's a tough road. And I always, if you can reach out to people, you know, and just get those feelings out and,
Right.
you know, ask for help when you need help. And some of our best friends, it's actually funny, I wouldn't say best friends, I guess, but some of our good friends are some of the nurses that we spent so much time with. We still go see them. We've stayed at their houses before. So,
Right.
I mean, they're great people, and utilize them. I mean, those
Right.
are the things that I can say.
Yeah, it
So,
is. You do become family with the nurses. I know Ian, he's just turned 17 and we're still in contact with his primary nurse. It's just a connection that's unbreakable. They were there in the darkest hours to protect your baby and fight for your baby, and they're special people.
yep, yep, I agree. I agree with all of those things. So, and they're there, you know, they're there for you. And,
Right.
you know, so utilize them and reach out to them and ask them questions. I mean, you know, like I said, we were fortunate to be there a lot of the days. I mean, we were always there every day, but we spent most of the day there is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I mean, you talk to them and you ask questions. And if you're not sure, you ask some more, you know, and I can't express how important that is to you too, as a
Right.
mental, as your mental health, as you're living this.
Right.
And another thing too, I think as a mom, especially because like I said, Kinley was my first. And so I didn't know what to expect even after delivery and all those types of things. But I think just as a mom, you need to give yourself grace and remember that you're going through and your body is going through so much more stress than a normal delivery, or not delivery, but a normal baby.
Right.
So you have to give yourself grace, and you have to walk through all of the emotions that you feel and just give yourself time.
I agree. I agree. It has been great talking to you, Alicia, and I appreciate you sharing Kinley's story. She's a fighter. She's a warrior. I look forward to seeing what she does over the next 10 years. And I appreciate you today sharing your story.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime. And thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right.